My ignorant parents preferred my adopted sister over me, so 10 years later, I abandoned them. I packed everything I owned into my 2004 Honda Civic, blocked their numbers, and moved 3 states away for college. I thought that chapter of my life was finally closed, but last month my sister found me on LinkedIn. She sent this long message about how mom and dad were struggling financially and really needed to talk to me. Said they'd changed, that they understood what they'd done wrong, and felt terrible about how they treated me growing up. I stared at that message for 20 minutes before deleting it. She didn't stop though. Every few days, another message. Then she found my Instagram, then my work email. Finally, after 2 weeks of this, I agreed to meet them for lunch at a chain restaurant halfway between our cities. I specifically chose a public place because I didn't trust them not to cause a scene. They showed up 15 minutes early, which surprised me. I watched them through the window, sitting at the table looking nervous. Mom kept checking her phone. Dad was fidgeting with his napkin. When I walked in, Mom immediately burst into tears. She stood up and tried to hug me, but I stepped back and just gestured to my chair. We all sat down in this awkward silence. The waitress came over and I ordered water. Just water. I wasn't planning to stay long. Dad cleared his throat and started this whole speech about how they'd been terrible parents to me, how they realized they'd always favored Stephanie, my adopted sister, and it wasn't fair, how they'd spent years in therapy working through their issues. Mom kept nodding and dabbing her eyes with tissues. I just sat there listening, not saying anything. After about 10 minutes of this, I finally asked them what they actually wanted. The crying stopped pretty quickly after that. Turns out Stephanie had racked up $60,000 in credit card debt over the past 3 years, trying to become a lifestyle influencer. She'd bought expensive cameras, lighting equipment, designer clothes for photos, and even paid for a professional website. The blog never took off. She had maybe 300 followers. Mom explained that they'd already emptied their retirement account, all $45,000 of it, trying to help her pay off the debt. But it wasn't enough. Now they were drowning and facing the possibility of losing their house. They needed $20,000 from me. My sister, who was sitting there the whole time looking at her phone, finally looked up and said it was the least I could do as family, that they'd raised me and given me opportunities, and now it was my turn to help. I almost laughed. Instead, I pulled out my checkbook from my purse. All 3 of them leaned forward, and I watched my sister's eyes literally light up. She even smiled at me for the first time in 10 years. I took my time writing out the check, making sure every number was clear and legible. Then I folded it in half and slid it across the table to my dad. I told them this would be the absolute last time we ever spoke, that after today, I wanted nothing to do with any of them. My sister rolled her eyes, but Mom and Dad just nodded eagerly, reaching for the check. Dad unfolded it, and I watched his face drain of all color. The check was for $20,000, exactly what they'd asked for. But it wasn't made out to them. It was made out to Sunrise Gardens Senior Living, the nursing home where my grandmother had been living for the past 5 years. Mom looked up at me with this confused expression and asked what this meant, so I explained. Remember Grandma, the one you told me I couldn't visit during college because I was too busy with my studies? Well, Stephanie got to see her every single week and post photos with her for sympathy likes online. Well, Grandma knew. She knew everything. We'd been secretly talking on the phone twice a week for years. I'd drive 4 hours every month to have lunch with her, and you never knew because Stephanie was too busy staging photo shoots to actually spend real time with her. 3 years ago, Grandma changed her will, left me everything. The house she'd owned for 40 years, her savings, her investment accounts, everything totaled just over $300,000. I'd been paying for her care at Sunrise Gardens ever since, making sure she had the best room, the best food, whatever she wanted. Cost me about $4,000 a month, but she deserved it. Dad's hands were shaking as he held the check. He looked at me and asked in this tiny voice if I'd really inherited everything. I smiled, grabbed my purse, and stood up. I told them that Grandma knew who actually loved her, that she knew who visited her because they wanted to, not because they wanted content for social media. Then I told them to enjoy their debt and started walking toward the exit. Behind me, I heard my sister screaming. She was yelling about how I'd stolen her inheritance, how Grandma was senile and I'd manipulated her, how she was going to sue me. People in the restaurant were staring. I just kept walking to my car. That was 4 weeks ago. Grandma passed away peacefully last Tuesday with me holding her hand. At her funeral yesterday, I was the only family member there. The nursing home staff came though. Her book club friends came. The volunteer who did art therapy with her came. 30 people who actually knew and loved her. I gave the eulogy and didn't mention my parents once.